Women, what's the biggest dating ICK you've ever experienced? After 6 months of being single, I finally caved and downloaded a dating app. 3 days in, I matched with Kieran. His photos weren't model material, but he had a nice smile and kind eyes that seemed genuine. We texted for a week before agreeing to meet up, and honestly, I was surprised by how easy our conversations felt. The first tiny red flag appeared when our server, this college-aged girl, accidentally spilled a little water while refilling our glasses. It wasn't a big deal at all, just a few drops on the table. But I noticed how Kieran's expression changed for a split second. He didn't say anything rude, but there was this flash of annoyance that seemed disproportionate. I brushed it off because everyone has pet peeves, right? And he recovered quickly, smiling at the server and saying it was no problem. As dinner progressed, I noticed he kept very meticulously arranging things on the table, like he'd adjust his silverware so it was perfectly parallel, and he'd wipe up any tiny crumbs immediately. Again, not necessarily a bad thing. Some people are just neat. But there was something about the intensity with which he did it that made me slightly uncomfortable. Still, the conversation was good, and I was having fun. After dinner, we decided to walk around downtown for a bit since it was a nice evening. As we were walking and talking, I mentioned my friend Chris, who had recently gone through a tough breakup. Kieran immediately asked if Chris was a man or woman. When I said she was a woman, he visibly relaxed. It struck me as odd, but I continued with my story. A few minutes later, I mentioned my friend Archer. And again, Kieran immediately interrupted to ask if Archer was male or female. When I said male, he got this weird look and asked how close we were and if we'd ever dated. By this point, I was picking up on some possessive vibes, which was bizarre, given this was literally our first date. Still, I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he'd been cheated on before or something. We ended up at this little ice cream shop, and as we were waiting in line, my phone buzzed with a text. I glanced at it quickly. It was just my roommate asking when I'd be home, but Kieran immediately tried to peek at my screen and asked who was texting me so late. It was 8:30 p.m. I was starting to feel uncomfortable, but I didn't want to be rude, so I just casually turned my phone away and changed the subject. We got our ice cream and found a bench in the nearby park to sit and eat. The conversation turned to past relationships, and he started asking very specific questions about my exes, how many I'd had, why we broke up, if I was still in contact with any of them. When I tried to keep things vague, saying I'd had a few serious relationships that just didn't work out, he kept pressing for details. Then came the moment that made my skin crawl. He suddenly said, "You know, I actually looked you up online before our date. I found your Instagram and Facebook. I even drove by your workplace yesterday just to see where you spend your time." He said this so casually, like it was a completely normal thing to do, even adding that he liked to be thorough about people he was interested in. I felt my heart rate spike. This wasn't just an ick. This was downright creepy. I remembered that my address was listed on my Facebook. Stupid, I know. I changed that immediately after this, and I wondered if he'd driven by my apartment too. I tried to keep my expression neutral while my brain scrambled for an exit strategy. I mentioned that I had an early meeting the next day and should probably head home soon. As we walked back toward the restaurant where we'd left our cars, he kept talking about future dates. Not in a "I'd like to see you again" way, but in a "next Saturday we'll go to this place, and then the weekend after that we can do this" way, as if it was already decided that we were now dating exclusively. When we reached my car, he moved in for a kiss, and I awkwardly turned it into a side hug. His face darkened for a moment before he forced a smile and said, "Playing hard to get, huh? That's okay, I like a challenge." The way he said challenge made my stomach turn. I got into my car quickly, locked the doors, and watched in my rearview mirror as he stood there watching me leave. The really unsettling part? When I got to the first stoplight, I noticed headlights behind me that looked like his car. I made 4 random turns, and the car followed me through all of them. I ended up driving to the police station parking lot and sitting there for 20 minutes until the car finally drove past and disappeared. Kieran texted me the next morning saying he'd had a great time and asking why I went to the police station, confirming he had indeed followed me. When I didn't respond, he sent 12 more messages over the next 2 days, gradually escalating from "Are you okay?" to "You're being really rude ignoring me," to "I deserve better than this treatment after I made so much effort." I blocked his number, locked down all my social media, and took a different route to work for the next 2 weeks.